Hi friends, I am here to talk to you about the books that I read in the month of November. I cannot believe how fast this year has gone by. Man, I am feeling overwhelmed because I have so many books to still read, but that's a great thing is they will always be there for you. In the month of November, I read 13 books. Two of these books I started at the end of October and just kind of finished them in November, but the rest I did start and finish in the month of November. The first book that I read is Masters of Death by Abbi Blake. Masters of Death is about a woman who's a vampire, and she is a real estate agent, and she's trying to sell a haunted house. The ghost refuses to leave, so her friend tells her about this guy who's good at solving these kinds of problems because he's a medium. So she goes to him for help, and he says, well, if you help me, I'll help you. And they go on this quest with some archangels. It's a very mixed bag of all the mythical creatures that you can think of that are humanesque, and it's really interesting. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 stars. It did drag a little bit in some parts, and there was a bit of a romance, but it was not the romance that I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be between the vampire and the medium, and it was not. Next, I read The Apothecary Diaries, Volume 1. I also read Volume 2 later this month, and I love this series. My husband and I started watching the anime together, and it's so interesting. Coming from a medical professional, there is a lot of medicine background, obviously apothecary, but there's also like a detective type of aspect to her work too, because sometimes she has to figure out what went wrong in a certain situation. So I really like that it combines with an investigation and medicine, and there's also the really interesting aspects of the Chinese inner courts and how the concubines were to the emperor. It's very, very interesting. If you have not watched this show, I would watch it. I can't wait for more to come out, so that's why I decided to start reading the manga. I gave both volumes that I read in the month of November 5 stars. Next, I read We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. This book is the sequel to Bunny. It is about the main character who was in Bunny. Her name is Samantha. She ends up being kidnapped by the bunnies that she wrote about, and they basically make it that Bunny is her novel that she published, and they are telling their sides of the story. It was fine. I just didn't think that it needed to be published, to be honest. I gave this book 3 stars. I enjoyed the different characters later on in the book. The first part of the book, I was so bored and so annoyed with these whiny girls. Just, I didn't care. I didn't care about them. Honestly, it didn't need to be. It didn't need to be published. So I gave it 3 stars. Next, I listened to The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. She played the grandmother in Gilmore Girls, and I really liked this book. She's a very interesting woman. I do really wish that she had gone a little bit more into depth about how she was feeling in certain moments. It doesn't need to be her diary, but I would have liked for her to make it a little bit more personal instead of just, this is my life, this is what happened. She's gone through a lot in her life, and she doesn't talk a lot about the emotional stuff. But I did end up giving this book 4 stars. Next, I listened to Movie Night by Paul Tremblay. This book was weird. There's a rumor that a movie was made and people died while making the movie, so the movie never came out. And now they decide to do a remake, and you're jumping between the timelines of what happened back then and what's happening with the remake. And everybody's saying that the movie is haunted, the movie's cursed, don't make the movie. And they decided to go with it anyway. It's very fever dreamy. The ending was very aggressive, and I don't know how I feel about it, but I gave this book 4 stars. Next, I listened to The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson. I've heard a lot of good things about his writing, and I really wanted to try him out. I am not a nonfiction girly, but I really like David Grann's writing. His stories do not read like nonfiction. They're not very dry. It feels like you're reading a fiction story, and that's why I really like him. So I heard that Erik Larson is similar, so I decided to try his writing, and maybe it was a subject matter, but I was really bored. Honestly, I was so bored with this book. I was literally sitting here in this chair thinking, why am I listening to this? I did learn stuff, but I was just so bored, and I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. Next, I read The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. This is the third main novel in the Housemaid series, and there's another novel that's out. It's a companion novel. This book is set far in the future after The Housemaid takes place, and our main character is married with children. They move into their dream house and they befriend some of the neighbors. There's just something a little bit off about some of the neighbors. She starts to notice behavioral things in her kid, and like things are going missing. She's trying to figure out this mystery of what's going on in her own neighborhood. It was okay. I was just kind of waiting for the shoe to drop, and then it didn't happen until like the last 7 chapters, because you have to really pay attention to see that there's something off in this. It was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Next is The Things Gods Break by Abigail Owen. This is the sequel to The Games Gods Play. I don't want to spoil too much about the first book, but basically the first book is about a series of trials that these champions have to go through, and we are following Lyra, who is Hades' champion, and she ends up in a very dangerous situation at the end of book 1, and in book 2 we are following her through that. I thought this book was okay. It just felt very repetitious of book 1 because there are a lot of flashbacks to book 1, and there's a lot of time travel, so you have a time loop, and it's basically trying to fill in the plot holes from book 1, which is fine. Maybe she had this planned out the whole time, but it just felt very repetitious and not like a fresh story. It's over 600 pages, and I wanted it to be fresh and exciting, and it just didn't. I didn't get that feeling from it. And I'm giving this book 3 stars. I think I'll continue the series, but it's not going to be a priority for me. I finally read Sunrise on the Reaping. It was so good to revisit this world and her writing, and I just forgot how jacked up this entire situation is, but I really liked this book. So for those of you who don't know, Sunrise on the Reaping is Haymitch's story when he goes to the Hunger Games, because then he's Katniss's mentor because he's been at the Hunger Games. So this is his story, him going to the Hunger Games, who he gets involved with. So in this book, there's a lot of political intrigue and different factions that are working together to kind of take down the game makers from the inside of the arena. They do find out that there is like a back door into the behind the scenes of the games, if you would. And so Haymitch is trying to get there and destroy the arena so that they don't have to keep doing the Hunger Games. Of course, it's always heartbreaking because you have everybody that dies. It's a ride. It's a ride. That's all I'm going to say about it. I gave this book 4 stars. Next, I read Accomplice to the Villain. This is the 3rd book in the Assistant to the Villain series. It's cute as always. I really enjoy these books. It is kind of like an Office Space romance where you have the villain, who's the boss, and his assistant, who is our leading lady. And then you have everybody else, like, your ogre that cooks for you, and your little fairy healer, and your dragon tamer who's trying to also tame other animals. Just the usual. But this book was a little extra special because Kingsley, who's my favorite, he is the advisor to the villain. He is the villain's best friend, and he is a frog. He is the little frog that they carry around, and he wears a little crown on his head, and he communicates by writing on signs and holding them up. He just is the comedic relief usually for these books, and I just love him. I love him so much. And he was main character energy in this book, so I loved it. I give this book 4 stars, and I will definitely be continuing the series. Next, I read Hooked: How Crafting Saved My Life by Sutton Foster. Funny enough, Kelly Bishop mentioned Sutton Foster in her book, and now I gotta read Sutton's book. I think that she did mention meeting Kelly Bishop. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I thought it was funny that they talked about each other in their books. This book is unique because it talks about how Sutton got really into crafting and how she has these distinct memories of working on a certain craft during certain parts of her life. So she kind of breaks each chapter up into that project and then tells you what was going on in her life while she was working on that specific project. So for instance, she worked on this glass mosaic, and she named it the Shattered Girl, but she was sharing about all this stuff going on in her life. It was just a very unique way to write this book. This book made me cry. She talked about losing her dog, and I was not expecting to cry at like 7 in the morning on my way to work. But I did. There is a little bit of an overlap of when her projects take place, so she does kind of backtrack a little bit in each chapter, so I wasn't a 5. But I did give this book 4 stars. Lastly, I read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I finally read my first Brandon Sanderson book. I did it. Finally read it. I like his prose, but I did feel like the story dragged a little bit. This book is about a woman named Tress who lives on an island. Her love of her life ends up missing, and so she goes to find him. She stows away on a pirate ship and pretends to be somebody she's not. Just goes on this adventure to find her love and break a curse. And it is a very classic high stakes fairy tale. It was cute. It did drag in some parts, but overall I enjoyed it. I gave this book 4 stars. Let's talk about my statistics. I read 1 physical book, 10 audiobooks, and 2 ebooks for a total of 13 books this month. I read a total of 4,834 pages. That's 161 pages a day for anybody keeping track. It took me about 3.6 days on average to read a book, and my average rating was 3.7 stars. I read 9 female authors, 3 male authors, and 6 new-to-me authors. I read 4 YA and 9 adults. I read 6 fantasy. I feel like I'm back in my fantasy era. I'm loving it. I'm here for it. I read 2 thriller, 3 nonfiction, and 2 other. Those are my graphic novels. My favorite book of the month was Sunrise on the Reaping. There's so much nostalgia with this book. It was so nice to be back into that world, but also heartbreaking at the same time because it's tragedy after tragedy in these books. And thank God they're fiction, because could you imagine? Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon in a new video. I have a lot in store for December, so please continue to hang out with me, watch, follow along. If you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. But I'll see you guys soon in a new video. Happy reading. It's a story. Okay. It's been so long since I read this book, so that's why I don't remember it. That was redundant. Of course I say that, and I read 3 nonfictions this month. Next, I listened to The Housemaid is Watching by Frida McFadden. I was like, who wrote this book? Pardon me. I need to go have a word with my pug. There's a bunch of squirrels on my fence, and I love seeing them, but they're very distracting. Okay, I think they're all gone now. Squirrel! Literally. Okay.